Hi, hello everyone. So today we're having a look at basic memory, the idea of memory. So obviously memory is pretty fundamental to a computer. It contains all the instructions that the CPU will follow, and without it, the computer just literally won't know what to do with itself. Okay, so first of all, we're going to have a look at RAM. So for those of you who don't understand, RAM stands for random access memory. And it's the main memory in a computer. You mightn't think it, but it actually is. Okay. You can both read and write to it. Henceforth, RW. Okay. You can both read and write to RAM. Okay. And most importantly, RAM is what's called volatile. So what does volatile mean? Well, there's two types. The volatile versus non-volatile. And it comes down to something very simple. Volatile is temporary. Okay. You need power. No power needed. Okay, that's the difference between them. Now we will look at the two types going forward, but for today, RAM is what's considered volatile memory. Okay, in other words, when you switch off the computer, whatever's in the RAM, and when I mean switch off, I mean properly switch off a computer, the RAM, anything on the RAM is gone. Okay, non-volatile is not gone. Okay, so what's the kind of characteristics of RAM? It's where all the data, the files, and the programs are stored when being used. Simple as that. If you're using something on the computer like I am right now with this thing, all the things necessary to make this work are in the RAM. It's as simple as that. Okay. So when the computer boots up, an operating system is copied from the secondary storage to the RAM in order to speed up what's going on. When software applications or documents or files are opened, they're copied from the secondary storage, which we'll talk about in another video. For example, from the hard drive to the RAM. They stay in the RAM until the files or applications are closed, and then they're written back. Okay. Now, it's very important that RAM is slower than cache, which is slower than registers. So, okay, slow, fast. Okay. It's obviously much faster than secondary storage, hard drives. But, wouldn't say it's quite in the middle, but it's somewhere there. Okay. So that would be the kind of use of it. Now, sometimes, it happens quite a lot, you're using so many things at once that you don't have enough RAM to do it all. And in those cases, what you can use is what's called virtual memory. Okay, and virtual memory is where the computer needs somewhere else to put an application. It moves data that hasn't been used recently onto a secondary storage. So it's secondary storage that acts as, for want of better words, RAM or primary storage. Okay. It's needed if there are too many applications open at once, or if a particular memory-intensive application is being used, and the other stuff can be just stored there part-time. Okay, so if the CPU needs to read data stored in the virtual memory, it must move the data back into the RAM in order to read it. It won't read it directly from from the secondary storage, wherever it is. Okay, it needs it back into that kind of primary RAM storage, or it won't work. Using a lot of virtual memory, you can see the problem here. It'll cause the computer to work that little bit slower. okay, because it's switching between virtual to the RAM and RAM. So obviously get a computer with as much RAM as possible to kind of get over this problem. But in general, that's the kind of problem with virtual memory, but it is used. So just be aware that computers can do this, even if you don't tell them to do it, but they can do it, okay? Now, the opposite of RAM is what's called ROM, okay? And ROM stands for read only memory. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's not read write, it's just read only. But it is non-volatile. So when you turn it off and turn it back on again, whatever was stored on it, you can read it again. It's not lost, okay? ROM tends to be on a small chip in the motherboard. It's not one of these ones where you can just like RAM, where you can just replace it and upgrade it and all that. It's just, it is what it is. Okay. Now, what does it contain? This is the most important. It contains very important information, actually. It contains the instructions, okay, called the BIOS, which are the basic input output system instructions. Okay, these are the instructions that a computer needs to boot up. So the minute power comes on in the computer, the ROM, it reads from the ROM what it actually has to do. Okay, so as soon as the computer powers up, the CPU reads the instructions from the ROM. This tells the computer to perform things like a self-check, to set up the computer, to start the Wi-Fi up, make sure the memory is working okay, see is the hardware present, and then get the operating system into the RAM ASAP. So that's all it has to do. It's very dumb, but it's super important, okay? Although the CPU can only read the ROM, it is possible to update the ROM by what's called a flash update, or firmware updates, a lot of people call them nowadays, okay? It is possible to update it, okay? So ROMs use what's called flash memory. It's very common for non-volatile memory, okay? We'll talk about it in another video. We already know that flash memory is used in things like SD cards, USB sticks, solid state drives. So there's a lot more we'll talk about it, but and this is very important. I can't stress this enough. These are memory, okay? If you buy a computer that says it has 2 gigabytes of storage, that doesn't mean it has 2 gigabytes of memory. The memory is the RAM and the ROM, okay? Secondary storage is something different, okay? Something totally different, okay? Some people get confused between the two ideas, but no, there is a subtle difference between memory and storage on a computer, okay? And I've kind of tried my best to explain what the memory is. Memory has a number of features. It can be volatile or non-volatile. If it's RAM, it's read-write. If it's ROM, it's read-only. The ROM has a very specific, you don't need 5 terabytes of ROM. It's as simple as that. It does a very specific thing. With the RAM, you can get 32 gigabytes of RAM. I can see them in computers, 16 gigabytes. 8 gigabytes seems to be the standard at the moment, okay? And that means that's how much memory, how many things it can remember at the same time. It's as simple as that, okay? So just be very aware of those subtle little differences between the two of them. It can be very hard sometimes to actually figure out the difference, but when we come on to talk about primary and secondary storage, it'll make more sense to you, okay? And I will look at that in the next video, the difference between primary and secondary storage, okay? And hopefully it'll kind of make a bit more sense to you between the two types. But memory is different. It should be different in your head to storage, okay? Storage contains memory, but memory isn't storage. I can't say it any more times than that, okay? Right, well, listen, thank you very much for watching this short video, and I'll see you in the next class.